Now, just a little warning before we begin, there will be major spoilers in this video for the 4th episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, so if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want anything ruined, it is a really good time to click away. Okay, so I'm going to kick this off by saying that this certainly wasn't the best episode of the series so far, nor did I think it was absolutely terrible or anything quite that bad. I thought in itself there were certainly parts of it or aspects of it that were enjoyable or cool in one respect or another, but overall there wasn't much in the way of actual plot movement here. All that was accomplished was showing that Obi-Wan is starting to, shall we say, get his groove back. He's getting back on the proverbial Force bicycle and quickly, very quickly, learning to ride or use the Force again. And that was all well and good, even though he starts the episode off by struggling to even move a tiny piece of scrap metal or something, whatever it was. And 20 minutes later, he's literally holding back an ocean with the Force. And honestly, I don't have too much of an issue with that being the case. We know Kenobi is or was a Jedi Master, so I don't need a training montage of him getting back into Jedi shape. I also think it makes sense that using the Force is like flipping a light switch or like riding a bike, like I said before. It's more remembering and connecting again with the Force, letting it flow through you and guide your actions. It's more of a mental mindset that you can get yourself into than any sort of physical shape you're in, if that makes sense. And though, yeah, obviously, considering where Obi-Wan starts the story out at, him getting back into the swing of things is a very important aspect of the story. I'm not saying nothing happened in this episode. I am assuming this whole series will end with him connecting with Qui-Gon Jinn, starting his training as a Force Ghost, and going down the path that will turn him into the Obi-Wan Kenobi we see in A New Hope. But the problem is, Obi-Wan starting to get back into shape was pretty much all the episode actually accomplished, outside of Reva again showing how intuitive she is and how she's a step ahead of everyone else. That and showing how much Obi-Wan is coming to care about Leia, which we'll talk more about in a bit. But otherwise, the story is once again in the exact same position it was pretty much 2 episodes ago, with Obi-Wan having just rescued Leia from the bad guys and barely being a step ahead of the Empire. And if this were maybe a different series altogether, or a longer one, or one with more than 6 episodes and or multiple seasons ahead of it, if this were, say, an episode of Rebels, one of the 20 or so in a season, or maybe a level in a video game, which this did feel like for a few different reasons. Anyway, if that had been the case, I might overlook a lot of the issues with this episode. I might just say, well, it was a cool kind of prison break episode with some decent action sprinkled in and be far more okay with it. Understanding that, as I've said before, not every single episode in a longer form series is going to have a major piece of plot progression or an earth-shattering reveal. But when you have only 6 episodes in total to work with, and you're also featuring characters like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Princess Leia, and Darth Vader, 3 of the biggest names or legacy characters in all of Star Wars, I do expect a little something more, or a lot something more. I expect some really good, tight storytelling that not only honors the lore the best it possibly can, but that really adds something worthwhile to it, because you are dealing with not just beloved legacy characters, but characters who are a part of the core story of Star Wars. You are creating a story that very directly connects with, or literally is a link between, the movies George Lucas created, and for many that is hallowed ground that needs to be tread upon very carefully. And so call me nitpicky if you want to, that's fine. I don't mind being called that if it means I expect Star Wars to be good and consistent. But I want something more than an episode that, again, felt like a prison break type episode straight out of Rebels. One that makes the Empire look utterly incompetent yet again, which was a huge problem with that show. Yes, it was for younger viewers, and you obviously can't have the Empire winning all the time and killing off main characters and the like. And sometimes, yeah, our heroes will need the Empire to look a little foolish in order to escape. And in this episode of Kenobi, the Empire looks pretty foolish. I mean, how does nobody notice a guy hiding a kid under his jacket? And I get it, warning sirens are going off and all of that. Maybe they're distracted. But in reality, shouldn't they be more alert and observant than ever, considering the situation, considering someone is trying to escape? Which also makes me wonder how a ship entering the atmosphere and dropping off 2 T-47 speeders goes completely unnoticed till they're right on top of the station and attacking the hangar bay. How are none of those TIE fighters we saw in the air? And yes, early in the episode they tried to sell the base as something that was impenetrable and that you'd be an idiot to try to attack or break into, but I didn't realize they were trying to imply the base would have horrible security measures in place, hoping its reputation alone would keep anyone out. Even though at the same time it looked laxed in some places, it was shown to have very strict security in others, or once you're inside, which we saw when Tala initially can't enter a certain area because it's not her sector. And then after using her rank to get past the security guard, she later gets approached when using a terminal she's not supposed to be using by yet another officer, and then she just takes that officer, like, it seems to be 20 feet away and knocks him out and kind of hides the body, I guess, which goes along with even later still hitting a stormtrooper in the helmet, her hitting a stormtrooper in the helmet with her bare hand and basically knocking him off balance, which really makes me wonder more than ever, what is the point of stormtrooper armor? And along with all this kind of talking about the escape, I'm not entirely sure what Reva's plan was here. Yes, she does seem to be, or it's implied she's a step ahead of everything and everyone else. But did she intentionally let them get away because she knew they had the tracker, which she herself, of course, put in the little droid, and that could then lead them back to the other rebels, or those who were helping the Jedi escape via the path, I guess you could call them? Or was she actually trying to catch them and failed, and the tracker in the little droid was only a backup plan? Because if she wanted them to get away, to lead them to the others, why was she the one that finally spotted them and called them out just as they reached the hangar? Why would she do that if she wanted them to get away? And if you say it's because she didn't want them to think they'd gotten away too easily, which maybe goes along with Leia saying this in A New Hope, that she has experience with this sort of thing.
They let us go. It's the only explanation for the ease of our escape.
Well, I guess that could be one thing if she didn't want them to think they were getting away too easily. But if that is the case, how did she expect them to actually eventually get away? She corners them in a hangar with 100 or so troopers, none of which are in on the plan that they're supposed to be letting them get away. And even if they do know that, how do they plan on making them or letting them escape in a believable way, assuming they didn't know some T-47 speeders were inbound to help them, which I don't think they did. Or did Reva and somehow no one else know that T-47s were going to show up and rescue them, or what? I'm very confused by all of this, because I think it's clear that the fifth brother didn't know there was any sort of plan to let them escape, nor did quite clearly Darth Vader know about any sort of plan when he almost kills Reva. But there's an even bigger problem with her letting them go with the intent of finding the others who are helping the Jedi with the path or helping the Jedi escape. Which is that there's absolutely no reason for Leia to be taken back to this secret base, or not to be taken back immediately to Alderaan, and with Leia goes the tracker that's in her little droid, thus no longer making it a ticket to finding Kenobi. I mean, why would they take Leia back to the hidden base? Why is Obi-Wan not contacting Bail Organa right away after rescuing Leia, and telling him what's going on and asking for help, or asking him where he can take Leia so he can get her back? And if you want to say for some reason he can't do that, that Obi-Wan can't just take her back to Bail Organa for reasons, or the Empire might be suspicious or find this odd or something, well, don't we then have a much bigger problem? Or maybe I should say we do have an even bigger problem, which is that it's not like Bail Organa can now hide his connection, some sort of direct connection to Obi-Wan Kenobi, since his daughter is what was used to lure him out. Basically, I'm saying, how is there not going to be a ton of suspicion around Bail Organa from this point on? How will this guy be a founding member of the rebellion when at the very least he'd be watched like a hawk from that point on, ever since a Jedi Master, after him being in hiding for 10 years, comes out of hiding to rescue his daughter, and not just once, but relentlessly tries to rescue her, even going to the lengths of breaking into the Inquisitor's base to do so. Not to mention, how is Leia and or Bail Organa not used again to lure out Kenobi? If it worked once, why won't it work again? And why is Reva and or Darth Vader or any of the Inquisitors not wondering why Obi-Wan Kenobi is risking so much to save Leia? Reva even tries to mind probe this 10-year-old girl at one point and fails, and doesn't really think anything too much of it. Not one thought about how, maybe this is a good time to bust out a midi-chlorian test and see what we're working with here. And I know Vader in A New Hope tries to mind probe Leia with an interrogation droid and doesn't think anything of it failing, or that her resistance could be force related, but now that makes less sense because of this, because now Vader should know Leia has a history of being resistant to mind probing. He should be more suspicious of her than ever at that point in time. And if your answer to all of this is, in the end, Darth Vader will think Kenobi is dead, or at the end of this series, thus sort of clearing Leia and or Bail Organa from being used to lure out Kenobi yet again, may I remind you of this line.
I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. We meet again at last.
In other words, why was Vader waiting for a dead Obi-Wan Kenobi to come back? But anyway, let's get back to the episode itself for now. I said in my previous reviews of the series I was going to try and wait for it to be done before getting too deep into any sort of inconsistency issues with the lore or with the films. But after this episode, they've already have gotten to the point where it's just too hard to ignore. Not that there weren't any major issues created by previous episodes, but I was really trying to give them some sort of the benefit of the doubt. But all of this with Leia really isn't making any sense. And so maybe tomorrow I'll do a video getting into just all the problems with Leia this show needs to somehow resolve in the final 2 episodes. Also, keep in mind I'll be doing a Let's Talk Some Kenobi video over on my second channel. I'll link to that in the comments and or description below, where I'll be responding to some of the comments left by all of you on this video, and that'll probably be up sometime tomorrow. Okay, so getting back to the episode now, the biggest issue with this one, as I was saying before, was the lack of plot progression. Though they did try their best to kind of mask the fact that nothing really happened by giving us something that maybe kind of feels like some sort of big, important reveal, but actually isn't. That being the dead former Jedi being entombed in the basement of this facility. And why I say this isn't that huge of a reveal is because in Rebels we know or have seen that the Empire is keeping dead Jedi to lure in living ones. We see Luminara encased in some sort of, I guess, amber-like substance. The same stuff that we see here in this episode. So yes, a part of me does like the consistency in this case. A part of me does like that this is consistent with Rebels, that they're not ignoring it in this case. But I don't know that I got any sort of wow or shock value out of this like I was probably supposed to. Especially considering the only Jedi I even recognized was Tara Sidnoob from Clone Wars, which was cool, sure, but again, that scene didn't hit the way I think they wanted it to, at least with me. You could, of course, feel differently, especially if you haven't seen Rebels. Another thing I really liked about the episode was the parallels between Obi-Wan and Vader at the beginning, showing them both burned and in their tanks. Thought that was some pretty cool imagery. Though I was kind of hoping we would get some sort of strange joint force flashback to vision thing between them, that maybe we'd get them briefly communicating with each other from afar. Or better yet, maybe even a flashback to the Clone Wars or something. Felt like the perfect opportunity for that. And it's really making me feel like we aren't going to see Hayden Christensen outside the suit other than that glimpse we already got and maybe another one at some point. And all around, I think this is just going to be, if it doesn't happen, a missed or wasted opportunity to show Anakin and Obi-Wan together again, to show Hayden and Ewan actually together again. Moving on, some of the action in this looked great and was really cool, that being pretty much everything involving Obi-Wan and his lightsaber action or battle against the Imperials, while other stuff looked less good, like the T-47s attacking the hangar just looked kind of off to me. Obi-Wan holding back the ocean and then letting it go and to take out all the Imperials and somehow getting through that door without getting even a drop of water on him was pretty impressive and maybe a little too impressive. And other than that, unless we want to get even more nitpicky, which I might do in that video tomorrow, there's not a whole lot to talk about in regards to this episode, which is the problem. Not a whole lot really happened when you stop and think about it, other than making me wonder how this will all make sense in terms of the bigger picture. And sure, you can say you don't care about that you're just enjoying the series as is, and that's all well and good. That's great if you're loving this. I don't really mind if you are. I don't really care if you want to just enjoy this for what it is. I'm not going to hate you or get mad at you if you're having a ton of fun with this. But for me, and again, this doesn't have to be you or the way you view it, but part of the enjoyment, a big part of the enjoyment is the connection to the bigger story, or a lack of one is what will take me out of it. There's just so much in here right now that just doesn't make sense or line up with what we know. And I might be willing to overlook all of that if I thought everything else about this series was exceptional. I wouldn't mind a few little plot holes or mistakes if the story was done extremely well, but it hasn't been. There has been a lot of issues with that as well, and I really hope beyond hope, I really do, that these final 2 episodes are somehow phenomenal. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of this episode or what you think of this series so far. And remember, I will be doing or reading and responding to some of those comments over on my second channel in a video tomorrow. Anyway, again, tell me what you think of the Kenobi series. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.